If this element of the Charlotte murder story turns out to be true, we might have our Cash for Kids controversy 2.0. Viva Fry, former Montreal litigator turned current Florida rumbler in my home office, and this is going to be some continued reporting on the Charlotte murder of the Ukrainian refugee in a subway that the media doesn't want to talk about. They started talking about it recently, but that's only to blame it on Donald Trump. Seemingly, another Republicans pounce story. You won't believe the headlines coming out of New York Times, Politico, and CNN. From Politico at Politico, Ukrainian refugee killed in North Carolina gets dragged into political messaging war, and you have a picture of Donald John Trump on that story. From the New York Times, a gruesome murder in North Carolina ignites a firestorm on the right. And from CNN, how the lives of a Ukrainian refugee and a Charlotte man with a criminal history converged in a fatal stabbing. It is beyond repulsive. The New York Times somehow ostensibly suggesting that the right is exploiting of this gruesome murder for political purposes. Politico talking about the story, not showing a picture of the victim or the accused murderer, but a picture of Donald John Trump on their story. And Politico suggests that the victim has now been dragged into a messaging war. No, the victim has been murdered by someone with a long rap sheet and a history of mental illness because a judge, arguably a corrupt judge, let this criminal go arguably for corrupt reasons. We're going to get into it. Now, a lot of people have been racializing this incident from the beginning because it was a black man with a history of mental illness and a long criminal record who stabbed a white woman in the throat. I was reluctant to get on the racial angle to it because other than the fact that the accused murderer is black and the victim was white, we didn't have any indications that race played a role in it. That wasn't until they released a portion of the video where you saw the accused murderer saying, "I got that white girl." Well, now we have our confirmed racial element to this story, and I dare say it's still not necessarily about race, but about how mentally ill career criminals can be brainwashed by a media to hate whitey so much that they see a white woman in a metro station, they go and stab her in the neck, and then say in their psychotic minds, "I got that white girl." Now, how is it that a career criminal with a history of criminality, violent criminality, and mental illness was out on the street? Well, let's just go ahead and ask the judge, shall we? I don't mean ask the judge literally, I mean we're going to read an article on who this judge is and how it came to be that this man she let go onto the streets to commit this act of savage barbarism. From Newsweek, who is Teresa Stokes, Charlotte judge who released DeCarlos Brown Jr.? Published September 9, 2025. Judge Teresa Stokes has attracted scrutiny on social media after it emerged that she presided over a previous case involving DeCarlos Brown Jr. months before he was accused of murdering a Ukrainian refugee. Brown, 34, has been charged with the murder of 23-year-old Irina Slutskaya, who was stabbed in Charlotte, North Carolina on August 22nd. Records show that Brown has been arrested 14 times in over a decade and was diagnosed with schizophrenia. And it's not just that he had been arrested 14 times over a decade and been diagnosed with schizophrenia. He had been arrested for very violent, very serious crime. He has been previously convicted of felony larceny, robbery with a dangerous weapon, and communicating threats, leading to a 6-year prison sentence in 2015 for incidents dating to 2013 and 2014. He was released in 2020, then months later, he was charged with assaulting his sister. Newsweek reached out to the Mecklenburg County Court via email outside normal office hours for comments. Later on in the article, what to know? Stokes is a magistrate judge for the Charlotte District of Mecklenburg County Court, North Carolina. She has also been linked to a charity that provides mental health and addiction support by social media users, though Newsweek was unable to verify these claims. In January 2025, Brown was arrested for alleged, quote, misuse of the 911 system, end quote, and was released after signing a written promise to appear at his next court hearing, according to court documents signed by Stokes and seen by Newsweek. Well, it seems he made good on his promise to appear by murdering Irina Slutskaya. It is so sick and so sad. It's tragic, except the people responsible for the tragedy do not suffer the consequences consequences of their own failed policies. And then getting into the alleged charity with which the judge is involved, some online users have identified this judge as having a stakeholding interest or some form of an interest in a drug rehabilitation clinic, which might explain why she might be releasing violent, crazy criminals to the streets. If they go to these clinics, it's hypothesizing for the time being, but if it turns out to be true, this is going to be Cash for Kids 2.0. Instead of being corrupt judges sentencing innocent people to fill their own jails that they have a private interest in, it's going to be corrupt judges letting violent criminals go to the extent that they go to their rehabilitation clinics for whatever financial kickbacks they might get as a result of such corruption. On Twitter from Publius at Ocasio Cornpop, new Magistrate Judge Teresa Stokes, who released 14-time criminal DeCarlos Brown Jr., is also the, quote, Director of Operations, end quote, at Second Chance Services, a mental health and addiction clinic in Charlotte, North Carolina. Does this judge release violent criminals into her treatment center to get paid by a government contract? Investigate this racket at AG Pam Bondi at AAG Dillon. To which I replied, Viva Fry at the Viva Fry, this could very well be the, quote, Cash for Kids, end quote, scandal 2.0. Except instead of crooked judges getting a kickback by locking up the innocent in their facilities, a crooked judge may have been getting some form of a kickback by releasing the guilty to their treatment facilities. This tragedy has indeed become politicized, but I would argue only for the right reasons, that being crime enforcement and these lax policies in blue cities that result in innocent people getting murdered. Can you imagine how this would have been politicized had it been a white murderer and a black victim, and or a Russian murderer and a Ukrainian victim? It would have been politicized to the ends of the universe, as it is because of the demographics. CNN, New York Times, Politico don't want to cover it until they have to, and when they do, it turns into a Republicans pounce story. Well, if that means Republicans pounce on soft on crime Democrat liberal policies, and Fox News is indeed reporting on some members of the GOP who are pouncing for all the right reasons. From Fox News, North Carolina Republicans demand firing of judge who freed Ukrainian refugees murder suspect. The letter was signed by all 10 House Republicans in North Carolina's congressional delegation by Elizabeth Elkind, Fox News. Published September 9, 2025, 10:02 a.m. First on Fox, Republican members of North Carolina's congressional delegation are calling for the removal of a state judge who released a man now accused of stabbing a Ukrainian refugee to death on a Charlotte train. All 10 GOP members from the Tar Heel state signed a letter urging formal proceedings to remove Magistrate Judge Teresa Stokes. They cited her decision earlier this year to release DeCarlos Brown, quote, based solely on his written promise to appear for a future court date. They argued that the release, quote, was made despite Brown's extensive criminal history, which included at least 14 prior arrests for serious offenses such as possession of a firearm by a felon, robbery with a dangerous weapon, and physical assault of his sister, end quote. For those of you who have been around the channel for long enough and are tuned in to our Viva and Barnes Law for the People Sunday night show, Robert Barnes and I have been saying for a very long time, nothing is going to change until some of these judges are held to account, impeached, removed from the bench, and sometimes jailed if warranted. Nothing is going to change until that happens, and it seems that some members of the GOP are starting to urge that to happen. And from the letter, Congress of the United States, House of Representatives, the Honorable Roy H. Wiggins, Chief Judge. Dear Chief Judge Wiggins, we are writing to urge you to initiate proceedings under North Carolina General Statute 7A-173A for the removal of Magistrate Teresa Stokes from office. That statute provides for the removal of a magistrate for willful and persistent failure to perform the duties of the office or conduct prejudicial to the administration of justice that brings the judicial office into disrepute. Magistrate Stokes' actions in the case of DeCarlos Brown Jr. clearly meet both of these grounds for removal. In January 2025, Magistrate Stokes authorized the release of Brown based solely on his, quote, written promise, end quote, to appear for a future court date. This decision was made despite Brown's extensive criminal history, which included at least 14 prior arrests for serious offenses such as possession of a firearm by a felon, robbery with a dangerous weapon, and physical assault of his sister. In 2014, he was sentenced to 5 years in prison for robbery with a dangerous firearm. The January charge, a Class 1 misdemeanor, arose after Brown became combative with police officers. Yet despite this history of violent and unstable behavior, Magistrate Stokes released Brown without requiring bond or imposing any meaningful conditions to safeguard the public. This reckless decision had devastating consequences. On August 22nd, 2025, while his misdemeanor case was still pending, Brown boarded a Charlotte light rail train and fatally stabbed 23-year-old Irina Slutskaya in the neck as she was returning home from work. Ms. Slutskaya's murder was not only a profound personal tragedy, but also a direct result of a failure of judicial responsibility. By releasing a repeat violent offender on nothing more than his written promise to appear, Magistrate Stokes displayed a willful failure to perform the duties of her office and engaged in conduct prejudicial to the administration of justice as set forth in NCGS Section 7A-173A. Her decision has undermined public confidence in the judicial system and exposed the community to wholly preventable harm. And I totally agree. This soft-on-crime, bleeding-heart liberal policy is devastating for communities. It's empowering to criminals, and you have the media working with the criminals, seemingly covering up the story until they can no longer cover it up, and then actually using it to blame the Republicans for pouncing on the tragic, violent, and utterly preventable consequences of bleeding heart liberal policy. A lot of politicians on Twitter like to say, oh, the most violent states are all red states. When you take 1 second to look into that stupid claim, and I'm talking about you, Gavin Newsom, you will see that that violence is almost always concentrated in blue cities. In fact, I think 10 of the 10 most violent cities in America are blue cities. Yes, some of them are in red states, but what is clear is that it is the result not of the redness of the state and the blueness of the mayor and the blueness of their soft-on-crime policies. This was all entirely preventable. This was all entirely predictable. We have a corrupt media apparatus that stays silent until they can no longer stay silent, or if the incident was reversed, would be loud and would be protesting in the streets, but nobody's protesting in the streets for a murdered Ukrainian refugee. Not even the people with Ukrainian flags in their bios on Twitter are up in arms about this egregious injustice. Democrat mayors want to be soft on crime and understanding of the criminals. Democrat judges empower and reinforce these policies. The Democrat media covers it up until they can no longer cover it up, and when they have to cover it, blame it on the Republicans, and as a result, innocent people are dying. The defund the police politicians and media deter good people from becoming police officers. The prosecute innocent bystanders who actually intervene to subdue crazy, maniacal, violent people on subway systems deters other civilians from getting involved, and instead of being tough on crime, you are actually soft on criminals, resulting in the death of innocent people. That's where the story lies as of today. If you like what I do, you know what to do. Like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell. YouTube is an asshole and definitely not treating my channel the same way it treats other people's, but I don't care about that because we are on Rumble, daily live at 3 o'clock. Sunday nights, Viva and Barnes Law for the people. If you really want to support the work that we do, vivabarneslaw.locals.com. But most importantly, exercise, eat healthy sunlight, talk to people in real life, and actually, I dare say, more important than anything, total situational awareness at all times. Do not let your guard down. People are dangerous. The media is dangerous, and these blue cities are dangerous. So with that said, you know what to do, yada, yada, yada. Now you know your vlog. Peace out, peeps. Booyah!